Hello, hello, welcome back. It's been a little bit since we've done one of these, but how are you doing today, everybody? I hope you're well. Welcome back to the weekly show. How is it going? How are we all? The weekly news show, and it's been a bit of a quiet week. It has. I'm not gonna lie. It's been quiet. It's hard sometimes to find enough things to talk about, but I think we've got some things I want to get through in today's show. So welcome to everybody over here on Big Up Watching. And if you're watching over on YouTube afterwards, you can always come over and join us on Big Up, where we do the watch alongs through the season and all of that as well. But yeah, there's a few things I do want to discuss. There was a few things that happened this week, and that's what I want to get into in today's live weekly show. And hello to everybody over here, Fuzzy, Connor, Super Arm, all of that. Good to see you guys as well. A few things. There has been through this week some talk about, the midfield, about January, in addition to some things about the goalkeepers. We're going to talk about some team news and all of that too. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Let me pull up the right thing here as I want to do this and make sure I've got this all set up right. Let me know if there's any issues. Everything should be working okay, so you can read and see what I'm showing here. But this was at the start of the week in terms of, I think it was the final deal sheet, or it was just a final story at the start of the week. It says midfield is the glaring obvious choice for January, although whether that is still too early for United to revive their pursuit of Carlos Baleba remains to be seen. United attempted to steal a march on rivals for Baleba by holding talks via intermediaries last month before Brighton made clear in direct club-to-club talks they plan to keep the 21-year-old for another season at least. So obviously I've been talking about recently the fact that, when we are looking at January and where we're at, we made the decision to not go and panic and sign somebody else, some players that we maybe didn't want as much, in order to put things off and look. And I said we do have money and we do have the willingness to spend in January. And essentially that's what we're seeing here. We have the ability to spend in January. January is going to be a market we're going to be looking at. Whether it's Baleba or not, we don't know yet, but I think by the end of next summer, there's a real possibility United will be getting two midfielders. So it could be, if Baleba is not available in January, could be in summer, could be somebody else in January. There might be other options as well, which kind of leads us to the next story, which is essentially Fabrizio kind of saying the same thing. A new midfielder would join Manchester United in January. It remains to be seen if it's a top player like Baleba, as the deal will be difficult, or an opportunity in the market like Conor Gallagher. So what I look at here, and we were just discussing this on yesterday's live as well, and this is where I think it's really important to take note here, is that we want two midfielders, but they might be different. And we were kind of classifying our midfielders into that 6 or 8 role over, in that video, looking at the options and the targets and everything that United are looking at. One of them, we look at like guys like Elliot Anderson. We look at guys like, Elliot Anderson. I think there was Ederson, and we're saying that these guys are definitely 8s in this team. And then we look at the guys like, Baleba maybe could be both. And then we look at the guys like Wharton and Yeoman, and we say, well, these are definitely 6s, and maybe Buwadi. So those are ones I'm all keeping an eye on. And the thing is if we want two in the end, Baleba, because he could be either for us, he could be pretty much anything, it doesn't really rule out one side or the other in terms of what we could bring in. An opportunity like Conor Gallagher, who to me might be a bit of a short-term one, is obviously an 8. He's not a 6. And that could be somebody that we look to bring in addition as well, so that we just have more options. But it is really interesting to see how, how we're looking at multiple types of midfielders, and we could sign one or the other. I think the important point here is, again, thinking with the grand scheme of the rebuild and saying we have an 8, a 6, a center back. We have all these positions we need still, probably 4 or 5 total by the end of next summer. We'll just, whatever we can get, we'll get. Obviously, the midfield will be the focus, but we don't have to get the 6 now if the 8 becomes available. That creates some selection issues and things, but still, it is a part of the thought process that kind of goes into all of this. So I think it's just a new, interesting way to look at the way United are acting in the market and are moving. And again, this is all well in alignment with what we heard towards the end of the what I was sharing towards the end of the window and in this last week, which is we are going to be active in January to get something done. I still have a feeling we might throw something at Baleba, try to get it done there. Then we move on to Onana, and we're going to talk about a couple of points here that I brought up earlier in summer that were issues. It says, just then, Sir Jim Ratcliffe supported the decision to ditch Andre Onana as Manchester United's #1 goalkeeper, which has taken the Cameroon international by surprise, and a lot of media too. And I think it's become really clear who was telling the media that Onana's the guy, Onana was the guy, Onana's got the confidence, Onana's got the backing and all that, because it wasn't Jim Ratcliffe, it wasn't Ineos, and it wasn't Ruben Amorim, that's for sure. Somebody else was putting those stories in there, and I think we kind of know who now. Then this part I think is really interesting because we discussed this a few times. I said before, Amorim was really unhappy and unimpressed by the fact that Onana came back essentially unfit and got injured right away. And there's a feeling maybe that he was already injured and carrying it from whatever he was doing over summer, and that was pretty unacceptable. And at that point in time, they were super disappointed with him. And it says Amorim was unhappy with Onana, suffered a hamstring tear in his second day of preseason after returning from Cameroon, where a video emerged of him playing outfield in a muddy makeshift pitch with friends. United boss was also worried about Onana's omission becoming a distraction for Le Mans as the Belgian settles in, reached the decision to move him on with Director of Football Jason Wilcox. So, clearly there were some issues and reasons why they wanted to move him on and get him gone. And one of them being that issue with the injury and all of that was definitely something they were far, far from impressed by. Let's put it that way. And again, it's like we're talking about. It's not like players can't do what they want in their, in their summers and everything. But when you do, and then you go and get injured, it's chaotic. It's like it's really problematic when you open the door to some of the problem, to people wondering, did you get hurt doing something stupid over summer and then come back unfit, and things like that, especially when you see so many players, who came back really, really in good shape and everything. And so I think Onana made some very poor decisions this summer, especially after he seemed to get probably undeserved backing from the club and from Ruben at a few points in time. Then there was this interesting story, whether true or not, I don't know, but then there was this one. It says, in the last days of the transfer window, United tried to sign Malik Fofana. Jorge Mendes was the intermediary that played matchmaker between United and Fofana's father. Fofana was tempted by the move, but the green light never came. So that is interesting. Really good young player, really excellent winger, really excellent forward, huge bags of potential as a player. Was very hard for us to deal with when he came on, playing them in the Europa League. I would tend to believe there's something in this, and I would say that, interestingly, I wonder, if he's a player we might return to. We really do actually need more forwards, especially if we want to keep Ahmad kind of fully at wingback for a while. Next year, I don't think we have the forward depth. I was thinking about this and thinking, you go Šeško, Xerxes, Cunha and Mount and Mbumo. We really do need at least one more forward potentially. Otherwise, you have to sign 2 wingbacks to try to push maybe Ahmad further forward. But we do need another forward and this fits within the profile of what we'd be looking for: young, talented, rising, kind of ascending player that we've kept an eye on. So it's one I'm going to keep an eye on for later. When I think about players like him and Semenyo that we've potentially moved for in the last window and didn't get, that they might be the guys in the next window. And and all of that. So just something to think about on this one. I think this is an interesting claim, and I think that it potentially has some truth. And the reality is we kind of need another forward. So, one forward, one wing back, or two wing backs. But one forward, one wing back, one or two midfielders, and a center back are probably the signings we want to make next, not in that particular order. But that would be kind of the priority. So this is an interesting story. Player I would love to see at United. Bags and bags of talent. Could easily fit within the present way. He can play as a wide winger, but you could also, he has the technical ability, the qualities to do the thing, to drop in. He's a great dribbler. He's fantastic on the ball. Drop in, pick it up in the midfield, turn under pressure. He fits really well into a lot of the things that we want. And so a young player that a lot of teams will be keeping an eye on. Then there's this story. Tyrell Malacia could be staying put at Manchester United with a loan move to Yupspor on the verge of collapse. Now, a few moves have collapsed. And I think today, if I'm not mistaken, I was going to get to it, he has been included on a registration list for the Premier League. Now, the biggest thing that's been going on with Tyrell Malacia is, as discussed, unfortunately, that his knee issue, whatever it may be, the medical side of it has just pushed a lot of people away from signing him, and it's an issue. And so it's become a problem. Now his contract expires next year. So he'll probably, it seems like, maybe see out the season, maybe in January, get a new look at a loan, and then see if he can get somewhere for 6 months to play. But otherwise, it is what it is. I don't know what will happen. He's the last remaining member of the bomb squad that is still there at United. So I'm not sure exactly where this will go. I'm gonna interrupt this news to just do a little promo here on something that I want to mention for those of you watching here on Big Up or on YouTube. Obviously, on Big Up, we do all the watch-alongs here. But in addition, what we've added in this year is a new game that you can play. And I've got this fantasy game set up for Sunday. And you can head on over and to the watch-along and join and play. It costs 300 big bucks, which is the equivalent of $3. Or you can actually join for free by mailing something in, but that's paying, right? It's available to those in the UK or Spain, and if you're not, you have to take a small trip over to the UK or Spain. But you basically enter in the 5 players you think are going to earn the most points with your money here that you've got. With your budget that you get, you earn points kind of just like fantasy, based on the accomplishments of players, and you can win real prizes. So come on over and join. It's a lot of fun. We'll have updates during it. Look, someone else has already done it while we're here. It has a real prize pool for people entering, and it's fun. And they've actually been enhancing the features where while we're doing the watch along, when events happen, it'll like show something on the screen. Something happens, and Mbumo earns 3 points with a goal. What's going to show up on the screen? We'll be able to see on the leaderboard. You compete with me. You compete with other people in the chat. And we'll be doing this week by week, and it's growing every single week. So it's a lot of fun. So I recommend joining. So click the link below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're over here on Big Up, you can very easily just go over and sign up and enter to play this week for the Derby. It's going to be a fun one. Adds an extra layer of fun to everything. Jason says, should I ask my Notts Forest people about Anderson? Absolutely do. I'm very curious to see who has been in touch or interested in him, because as we speak about the midfield a little bit earlier, Anderson could certainly be one that is on everybody's radar as that number 8, and there's big expectations that he might get a move next season. So if you've got a way to get to Marinakis and ask him what's happening there and what he might cost, let us know. Let's look at this, and then I'll answer. There's a question here. Did the club not know that goalkeeper position was a problem despite what happened last season? If so, my faith in his future planning for club is a little shaken. No, they did, because they were looking at James Trafford for the majority of last year. They had discussions with James Trafford. They've been watching Senna Lamans for a long time. Why it took so long, I don't know, and I think was a bit of misjudgment. I think personally they had money and things kind of put aside for, like they had money and things kind of put aside for for the midfield for Baleba and all of that, and then it turned out, hey, that they couldn't spend it, and then they went back in for then they went back in and said, all right, we need to get a keeper now. So, but still, I also would tend to agree. I feel as though it's concerning even that it took this long. To me, I find it odd. It shouldn't have taken this long. It should have been something that was done earlier. But they definitely knew it was a problem because they were looking for people for all of that time. You know what I mean? They were looking at people for that, and that's why it's strange that it took so long, to get through. Essentially, that's how I kind of see it. So I don't know what the reason was in the end for everything, but at least it's done now. I don't know that it'll cost us the game, but regardless, obviously, India will be starting on Sunday. And obviously, we can kind of go back and forth around that. I think it's the right call considering how late Sene Lammens has joined. Obviously, though, then, of course, the question is, yes, I wish we'd gotten him earlier. Me too. Look, I think we've dropped a little bit of points already by not having the keeper. We'll see what happens on Sunday. I'm not going to doom about it yet, but clearly, I think it should have been done sooner. And I think if there was one mistake made this window, it was doing this too late. Because I think that they knew we needed a keeper. They've been watching one all year, and they should have done it. Was there any thought this summer to get Pogba? No, there wasn't. But that was the timing of it concerns me. The fact that it was a plan to do it, but the timing concerns me. Now, there's an interest on, and that, of course, does mean Lammens will be starting on Sunday. The other thing that we know about Sunday is that Mount and Cunha are out. Now, as I said before, they're not serious. And Amorim said if you ask Cunha, he'll say he can play. But he tends to be really careful with injuries. And I think this ties into why he's not starting Lammens as well. Ruben's really careful with injuries, and he's really careful with, he basically looks at training and says, hey, I didn't have a lot of time with these guys. They're not going to play. And the same goes for Lammens. When he has more time with him, he'll play. And I think he'll play sooner rather than later as well. And he's rated really highly, but he just wants to see some time on the training ground with him. Then there's an interesting story that says United are in a series of talks to play midweek friendlies in order to fill the void left by the lack of European football. It says there's some examples of other teams. I think it would be good to get some light matches in midweek during some times, especially as we go later into the year. There might be times when it's a good idea to do this, and all of that. And so I think that this is an interesting idea. I don't think it's it could be in front of paying crowds, but the reason for it would be not for that. I mean, the reason for it would be fitness and getting more training and more time and things like that. But we did some agreement with Leipzig over a friendly because of during the Šeško deal, and it makes me wonder if perhaps maybe they could, obviously the relationship's good, but maybe there could be a way to organize something, a little midweek game. But then when you factor in the travel and the things that go into all of it and the worry over injury, it's the type of thing that can be a bit unusual. There are often closed door matches that happen during the season, but they're usually local. So I'm curious to see if anything actually comes of this story in general. I'd be a little bit surprised if it did. I'd be a little bit surprised if it did at the moment, turn into anything, serious in that respect. So yes. Yeah, so we'll see on that front if anything comes from that. And then of course we got the actual full confirmation that Onana has joined Trabzonspor on loan for the duration of the season. So we got that kind of confirmation. Effectively, this does end his career at United. Surely it takes away our advantage in the Premier League, and that's the thing. If you play those midweek matches, it depends how serious they are. Usually you're playing more rotational players, getting minutes for players who aren't starting every week. But at the same time, yeah, you worry about it a little bit it just depends whether they feel there's a point where the fitness isn't the issue. It's just that we need to be fresh and that playing extra games is worth it. I don't know if we're there yet, but we're not there yet, but maybe later on. So Onana goes. Then we have our squad list. And here's the interesting part of it. You have this rule, right, that you can only have 17 players who do not fulfill the homegrown criteria. If you kind of look at this, we've got Heaton, Dermot Mee, Reece Bennett, Maguire, Luke Shaw, Ahmad, Mount. We actually have a very it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 21. We only have 21 players in here. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Yeah, 21. We only have 21 in our squad. I think we have the ability to do 25, if I'm not mistaken. So the reality is that we kind of need to, we've gone very shallow in our squad. We don't have to register youth yet. So, we've and I get that. Oh, you're right. We do have under 21s that are registered. You're right. So I was like, I feel like I'm missing someone because there's Aiden Heaven, Lenny Yoro, Kabi Mainu. Let's see, anybody else who's regular? That's it, right? So 24. So there's a bunch of players, and there's a few more players in the under 21s list. But then you look at the main list, and you've got like Dermot Mee and such in here, and you go and Malacia in there. So Dorgu too, yeah. Okay, so either way, I think when you factor it in, we do have a thin-ish squad. We have which is fine, and we're expecting to lose more players next year. And it's a young team as well. And I think what it shows is that one thing that is a little bit not concerning, but is that if we're going to go into next season competing on multiple fronts, we do need to likely get a few more homegrown players to add to this, to give us the ability to register, enough players and all that too. But we do need a few more signings to add to this. I think next year we need our squad to be a little bit, excuse me, a little bit deeper rather than thin. And we could lose even more, homegrown players. I mean, we have like Reece Bennett in here, Harry Maguire last year of his contract, Reece Bennett, Dermot Mee, Tom Heaton. Like we could lose 4. We could lose 4 more homegrown players, and that could be again fairly limiting. In terms of our first team squad, obviously some more will qualify, like Kabi Mainu will qualify, obviously, if he's on the over 21s list later on. But yeah, we actually might need some more because some of these players won't be in the under 21s in the future. Next season, I'm not sure about Dorgu or Lenny or Kabi. So they'll have to be registered in a few, and Dorgu and Yoro won't be homegrown. Anyway, point being, we're gonna need some more players. So it's an interesting that we've kind of shrunk the squad down quite a bit. We may need to improve it a little bit there and add some homegrown talent that are actually, we're gonna play, so that we have a full squad to work with there. That's something to think about. So it's just interesting to kind of take a look at this list. And again, as we say, it's kind of interesting to see Tyrell Malacia being registered, which means he'll probably stay. I doubt he'll really play, but of course, then maybe he'll get a loan in January or something like that. But next season, I think signing a few more Premier League players will be important as well. One final time, just wanted to say, make sure you come over and join the competition. Use the link below if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're over here on Big Up, you can do it right away. But yes, thank you guys for that. So those are the stories. That's it. Those are the stories for this week. That's everything. Yeah, that's it. That's all we've got. So obviously the next thing is to take a look at the game. Hopefully we have a good game, team news, things like that. And we'll be back next week. There might be, obviously, there's always more stories and things like that to talk about. But yeah, I will be live later. I'll have a match preview later, have a few other things later. So I will see you all there. If you're watching over here on Big Up or on YouTube, I'll catch you later. Thanks for watching today. That's our weekly news. It's quiet outside of the window, these weekly news stories, but that's okay. Again, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Come join over on Big Up for the watch-alongs, as well as to participate in our fantasy game for the week. Thank you all. I'll see you later. Have a good one.